Live on GB News, Olivia Utley exposes a mounting crisis as ministers move to overhaul the asylum appeals system. The plan to replace tribunal judges with professionally appointed adjudicators promises faster removals, but sparks warnings of a fierce backbench rebellion and human rights concern. Nigel Farage even floated a voluntary returns package, offering £2,500 and flights, stoking the row further. With hotels full and political pressure rising, this is a policy fight that could reshape Britain's immigration debate. Watch the clip. Before this, I want to say a big thank you to all our supporters who helped us reach our very first 1,000 subscribers. That achievement truly means a lot and inspires us to keep giving you our best. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. Most people who watch our videos aren't actually subscribed. We know life gets busy, but subscribing is completely free and it really helps us grow. Our next goal is 3,000 subscribers, and with your support, we can get there even faster. You can also support the channel by checking out the links in the description, where you'll find some valuable books. They cost you no extra, but each purchase gives us a small commission that helps us improve our content. Thank you so much for being part of this journey.
The Prime Minister apparently is going to overhaul the asylum appeal system, limiting the authority of judges to address a mounting backlog. Being reported in the Times, apparently this all comes amid escalating protests, of course, which we saw yesterday, over migrant hotels.
Indeed, and the Home Office argues it will enable the government to move asylum seekers out of hot hotels faster, but could it all be too little too late?
Well, joining us now in the studio, GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. I haven't seen you since you left to have the baby. How is he?
He's wonderful, yeah. He's 8 months old now.
But you can't stay away from politics, can you?
No,
I mean,
exactly.
You must have been sitting at home. I know you don't want to leave your baby, of course, at home. But the lure of coming back to work, there is so much to talk about at the moment.
So much to talk about. I had 5 months where nothing very much happened, and then the local elections happened, and it suddenly got so exciting. So I'm very pleased to be back.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you are back, yeah. So, it seems like they're always on the back foot, this government. Something happens, the people get riled up about it, they start speaking about it, or opposition members start speaking about something, and then it's almost as though there's a knee-jerk reaction from the government. Is this another?
Well, it does feel like it. Ministers say that these plans have been in the works for weeks and weeks, and yet they have only reacted, as you say, it does feel a little bit knee-jerk since this Epping protest and the resulting High Court injunction, which allows the council to block this protest. So you've got the situation where the government is desperately trying to do something about the number of migrants housed in hotels. That has gone up hugely, gone up by 8% just since Labour took office. In the last financial year alone, it's cost £5.4 billion. Now, the reason behind this huge and expanding number of migrants being housed in hotels is how long the asylum process takes. On average, it takes over a year, and sometimes it could take much longer, many years, for an asylum decision to be reached. And that is because there's this sort of labyrinthine process between a person applying for asylum and their case finally being either accepted or rejected. Lots of them are rejected right at the beginning, and then they go through this process where they can appeal to a tribunal. Now, what the government is saying at the moment is that the problem is that there's first-tier tribunal judges, as they're called, the very first people you can appeal to if you're an asylum seeker who's had your claim rejected. They are over-interpreting the EU right to a family life and essentially pushing through lots of appeals which the government think, which Yvette Cooper and the Home Office think should not be accepted. So what the government is proposing to do now is get rid of that layer of first-tier tribunal judges, get rid of a layer of the judiciary. So essentially, instead of having those judges, you would just have a board of sort of professional adjudicators, they're calling them. And what the government hopes is that that would mean that lots of those asylum appeals which get accepted would actually be rejected at that very first hurdle. And that would theoretically really speed up the process. Now, there's lots of problems here. Obviously, one of them is that there is this enormous backlog of asylum seekers in hotels. And as you said there in the introduction, it feels like a little bit too little too late. Perhaps if you started with this programme now and you didn't have a backlog, you might be able to clear some cases quickly. But with this sort of bottleneck, it'll be very hard to make an impact at the kind of speed that the government needs an impact to be made. The other problem is that there are going to be lots and lots of left-wing Labour MPs who don't like this at all, who will worry, who will believe that the human rights of these asylum seekers are being compromised because they won't be able to get that legal right to appeal at the very first hurdle. Now, you would think that what she's going to do is tighten up the guidance in the first instance for these first-tier tribunal judges, and then once they are replaced by the professional adjudicators, for the professional adjudicators too. But of course, you know, people like
them.
Who chooses them, exactly. And also you have people like Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch too, would say that some of these judges are motivated by politics, really, that they have a sort of ideological agenda. And as you say, how do you stop those professional adjudicators having exactly the same kind of agenda? Surely the sort of person who decides to go into that job has a kind of real interest in human rights and might interpret them in exactly the same way as the judges have done before them. I think the Home Office thinks that they might have a little bit more control over professional adjudicators employed by the Home Office than they do by lawyers.
Do you think any government at the moment would be able to solve this crisis in time? It's just as you were explaining at the beginning. They can't. If they were starting from zero, they might be able to actually invent a system that worked. But now there is such a horrendous backlog that can you ever catch up?
Well, it's a really interesting question. And of course, Nigel Farage believes that he can. Really interesting interview with him yesterday in the Times. Even he admits that it would be incredibly expensive. What he would like to do is have a 6-month voluntary returns period, a sort of amnesty, essentially, where migrants who've come here, who are awaiting their appeals, so they're being housed in hotels at the moment, could choose to be sent home. Now, he would immediately give them, no questions asked, £2,500 and pay all of their airfares and expenses to get back to the country that they came from. He admits that that would be very, very expensive indeed, but he says that actually over the course of 5 or 10 years, the overall cost would be a lot smaller. So that's what he thinks he could do. That's the kind of most drastic, most dramatic solution. Kemi Badenoch is going to announce, we're pretty sure, at Conservative Party conference, that she would want to leave the European Court of Human Rights. Obviously, that would speed things up a lot more. But as you say, with a backlog this size, it's going to be really, really tricky, particularly with just so much opposition from within the establishment. Left-wing Labour MPs, human rights lawyers, charities, Refugee Council is very vocal at the moment too. It's a really, really tough ask.
Yes, I don't envy the government's trying to do this, actually.
No, and you could argue that if Nigel Farage is looking forward to the point where he might become Prime Minister, you've got another 4 years of not sorting out the problems.